All right, today we are diving into a really cool economic puzzle. It's an ancient problem, honestly, but it's got this wild 21st century crypto solution. So, what if you could trade literally anything for anything else without ever needing a middleman like the US dollar? Let's get right into it. Okay, so to get our heads around this, let's start with a really simple scenario. Meet Alice. Alice has some Bitcoin, but what she really wants is some ETH, a pretty standard trade in the crypto world. Now, here comes Bob. And guess what? He has the ETH that Alice is looking for. Perfect, right? Well, not so fast. He doesn't want her Bitcoin. Bob is actually looking to get his hands on some Solana. And finally, to complete our little circle, we have Charlie. Charlie's holding the SOL that Bob wants, and wouldn't you know it, he's looking for the exact Bitcoin that Alice started with. So this is the classic problem economists call the coincidence of wants. Basically, nobody has a direct match. Alice can't trade directly with Bob, Bob can't trade with Charlie, and so on. So how do they all get what they want without going through the hassle of selling for dollars, then buying what they need? Solving this could change how we think about value itself. To really appreciate how big of a deal the solution is, we first have to understand why this is so ridiculously hard to do with today's blockchain tech. And it all boils down to one thing, a fundamental problem in how we give instructions. For pretty much the last decade, blockchains have run on what's called the imperative model. And that's just a fancy way of saying that you, the user, have to figure out the exact how of every single transaction. You've got to find the right exchange, you've got to map out the specific trading path, you have to worry about network fees and price changes, and then you sign off on that one single rigid plan. It's a lot of work. And this old way of doing things, it creates some massive headaches. It breaks up all the money, the liquidity, into thousands of separate little apps. It forces every single user to basically become a trading expert. And maybe worst of all, when you broadcast your exact plan, you're just begging for bots to jump in front of your trade and take a cut, which costs you money. It's called MEV, and it's a huge problem. But get this, a new way of thinking is flipping this entire model on its head. We're moving away from a world where you have to tell the system how to do something and into a world where you simply tell it what you want the end result to be. It's a huge shift from focusing on the process to focusing on the outcome. Now, this whole new approach needs a completely new language, and that language is built around a really powerful idea called an intent. So what is an intent? Well, it's not a transaction like you're used to. It's better to think of it as a signed wish. It's a little piece of code that says, hey, this is the future I'm willing to accept, and you sign it with your crypto key, making it a binding promise. And this right here is a perfect example. Notice what's happening. You aren't saying which exchange to use or what route to take. You're just setting your final non-negotiable terms. The how is totally missing. You just declare the what. Okay, so you're probably thinking, if the user isn't giving the instructions, then who is? That is a great question. And this is where a whole new kind of actor comes into the picture. They're called solvers. Solvers are basically these super smart economic matchmakers. They're constantly listening to this massive public pool of wishes, this soup of intents, and they all compete with each other to find the absolute best, most efficient way to make your wish come true. They scan everything, public exchanges, private deals, and most importantly, they look for other people's intents to find that perfect barter match. And you can see the evolution so clearly on this chart. We started with these simple aggregators that only worked with standard tokens and had zero protection against those front-running bots. Then we got batch auctions, which was a big improvement for privacy. But now with these intent-centric solvers, we get a system that's totally asset agnostic. We're talking NFTs, real-world assets, anything, with privacy baked in from the start. So let's bring it all the way back to our puzzle. A solver sees Alice's intent, Bob's intent, and Charlie's intent all floating around in the same network. It instantly recognizes that pattern, that circle of wants, and bundles them all together. Then it creates and executes one single transaction where, bang, everyone gets exactly what they wanted, all at the same time. No middleman, no extra steps. Problem solved. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because this isn't just about getting better prices or making crypto easier to use. This is about completely changing the definition of money itself. This is the key question that this whole technology forces us to ask ourselves. Why do we even need a single asset like the US dollar to be the bridge for every single trade? What if your house or a piece of art or your collection of digital sneakers could be just as easily traded for anything else?
Well, the people who designed the system argue that money is just a piece of technology. It's a pretty clever workaround, sure, but at the end of the day, it's an inefficient one we invented just to solve that original barter puzzle. It's just a patch we use to fix a coordination problem.
So what does this all mean? It means that with enough raw computing power, a network of these competing solvers can find a trade route between almost any two assets you can imagine. Instead of needing a single currency to bridge the gap, we can just use computation to build a custom bridge on demand for any trade. So I'll just leave you with this one final thought to chew on. In a world where you might not need a single universal medium of exchange anymore, the line between just an asset and actual money gets incredibly blurry. Every single thing you own becomes its own potential currency. And what does that mean for the future of value? Pretty mind-bending stuff.